All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I see people are still coming in, but I don't want to lose a minute from this panel, so I'm going to get started. Welcome to our final day of No War 2023. Bienvenidos todos al último día de esta conferencia. Before anything else, this is a bilingual panel, so I want to explain the interpretation function. Este panel es bilingüe, entonces antes de cualquier otra cosa voy a explicar cómo utilizar la interpretación y primero lo explicaré en inglés y después en español. So if you do nothing at all, you will hear all the presenters in their original language, so some in English and some in Spanish. To listen to the panel with the language interpretation enabled, then you'll need to go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and click on the interpretation button, which looks like a globe. Then you choose the language that you want to listen in, so English or Spanish. If you're joining from a mobile device, you might have to click the three dots or the more button and then click language interpretation. If you're having any problems with the interpretation, please let us know in the chat, and I'll remind our speakers to please speak slowly and clearly to make interpretation easier. Entonces, para escuchar al panel con la interpretación hacia el español, haga clic sobre el botón abajo que parece a un globo terrestre y seleccione su idioma, inglés o español. Por cualquier problema, por favor, déjanos saber utilizando el chat box. Y un recordatorio para nuestros panelistas de por favor hablar un poco despacio para la interpretación. Gracias a Jose Navarro por la interpretación de este panel. Huge thank you to Jose Navarro for interpreting this session. It is an important job and it is not easy. So my name is Rachel Small. I'm the Canada organizer with World Beyond War. I'm completely thrilled to be moderating this panel, which is the final one for this conference, though there are a few more exciting sessions coming throughout the rest of today. So throughout this whole weekend, this whole conference, various panels have brought fabulous guests on and have really dug into different aspects of nonviolent resistance to militarism. So on Friday, our first panel focused on unarmed civilian protection and international accompaniment efforts around the world. And then yesterday on day 2, we presented a panel on nonviolent resistance efforts that have been used to overthrow dictatorships and overthrow occupations. And there was a second one yesterday as well on nonviolent resistance as it's playing out in Ukraine right now. And then now, finally, this panel today is going to delve into a different area of nonviolent resistance, specifically what it can look like and what we can learn from the resistance of communities who are seeking to defend their land, their people, their community itself, when they're up against colonial occupation or other types of state-sanctioned violence, through corporate violence, etc. I'm so honored to be presenting 3 incredible speakers here today who are going to share really their lived experience in these struggles. So first, we'll be hearing from Juan Gómez Ruiz, a member of the civil society organization of Las Abejas de Acteal in Mexico, followed by Carlos Zorrilla, a leader in the successful efforts to defend the cloud forests of the Intag Valley in North Western Ecuador, and finally from Daoud Nassar of the Tent of Nations in Palestine. Each will have some time to share some of the story of their community's struggle, what the resistance has looked like, and hopefully some lessons or learnings to share with others around the world. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Juan Gómez to lead us off on this panel. We will have a Q&A at the end, so at any point, please feel free to type any questions you have for the panelists in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we will save them and share them with the panelists at the end. So Juan Gómez belongs to the Acteal Bees in Chiapas, which is a group of Maya Tzotzil origin, Christian, and pacifist, whose objective is to promote peace, justice, and anti-neoliberalism. This group was formed in the Chenalo municipality in Chiapas as a consequence of disputes and political injustices over the land left a person dead in 1992. Juan was born in the community of Chimix, located in the municipality of Chenalo, which is a community of 250 people. He has dedicated his life to peasant work and has also been part of many other initiatives, such as the board of directors of Las Abejas de Acteal, the Civil Association. He's been working for pacifism, nonviolence, justice, and respect for the human rights of Native peoples and their right to land. Welcome, Juan Gómez Ruiz. We can't wait to hear from you today.
Pues bien, hermanos y hermanas, compañeros y compañeras.
Dear brothers and sisters, and everybody who can hear me today through this Zoom session, on behalf of the organization of the Abejas de Acteal, on behalf of the survivors and the martyrs, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you the experiences of my struggle, or our struggle and resistance that we have gone through these 25 years since the massacre of Acteal and 30 years of the foundation of our organization. As a matter of fact, I am a survivor of the massacre. I've known from our movement ever since the beginning in 1992, which is the progress and which are the obstacles that we have had throughout these years. We were born because of violation of human rights. The three levels of government were never able to give justice because of different reasons, especially violation of human rights, the invasion of our territory, not only in the state where we live, but also nationwide. We have participated in different events, in different scenarios, in different movements, in partnership with other associations. At first, ever since the beginning of our association, we have had different experiences. We have raised our voice locally, regionally, and nationally, and they know us, or we are known as a nonviolent and pacifist organization. And we fight in defense of human rights, in defense of the territory and the land. And we fight through resistance. In 1994, we participated in a peace belt to stop violence in Mexico. We participated in what's called a Cinturón de Paz, or a belt of peace. And we were summoned by the CONAI. I believe you are aware of Mr. Samuel Ruiz Garcia, who was the Archbishop of our the church, and he gave us the opportunity to participate as members of this Pacific organization. So in 96, 97, there are different countries, there are different associations, and we were persecuted because of their struggle, because of their fight. Ever since 1996, the official party, which is the PRI, which stands for Revolutionary Institutional Party, they made us be part of it because, as a matter of fact, the Mexican government, we know that there is insurgency here in Chiapas, in this state. So the government wanted to destroy those organizations in defense of the land and the territory. So since we do not agree in participating in bearing arms and cooperating with this kind of activities, burning homes, stealing from people,
pues tuvieron que planear de cómo acabar a nuestra organización.
they were planning how to stop our organization, and they thought that we were part of the separatists.
Entonces fuimos desplazados
So we were
desde
displaced
97.
ever since 97,
Nos obligaron a cooperar, a tomar armas.
and they made us cooperate with them
Con el partido oficial,
to be part of the official party,
pero nosotros nunca estuvimos de acuerdo.
but we never agreed on that.
Desplazarse, buscar un
It was better to find a camp, an encampment where we could have a shelter.
Fue así. Entonces, los priistas y
So the
los tres niveles de gobierno
party and the three levels of the government started to
a entrenar a mismos compañeros.
train our partners, our brothers, from the community,
Entrenaron a tomar armas,
and they were trained into taking arms.
pues su objetivo pues es acabar a nuestra organización.
And their objective was to stop our organization, to
En la defensa de la tierra
stop other organizations that fight for human rights.
y pues en fin, pues llegó la masacre de Acteal.
And then the massacre happened.
Antes de la masacre, pues primero
Before the massacre,
nos desplazaron.
we were displaced. We had to flee. We had to leave our homes.
Pues robaron nuestras pertenencias,
They stole our belongings.
pues nos obligaron a afiliarse en el partido. Nos
They made us
para
be
comprar armas.
part of the party and cooperate in buying weapons, but we never agreed on that.
Que desplazar.
And that's why we had to leave our homes.
De eso no sabemos
Also, before that,
plan que tiene el gobierno.
I don't know if it's because of the government's
Pero
plan,
ya después supimos de que es un plan de Chiapas.
but then we realized that it was something called the Chiapas Plan in 94.
Gobierno del estado, están los tres niveles de gobierno.
We have the three levels of the government involved there, and also the military.
Pública del estado. Antes de la masacre,
Before the massacre,
circulando los militares, la seguridad
we
pública
had
del estado.
military and police
En la orilla de la carretera,
around, on the roads where we have the Naranjos encampment.
ahí estuvieron circulando
They were around that area
antes de la masacre de Acteal.
before the massacre.
Ahora, el 22 de
And the day of the massacre, December 22nd, 1997,
2 días de la inauguración.
when
Pero no sabemos si
it happens. So
apoyados por el
we are not certain if they were supported by the local
presidente.
president or by the
Hasta ahí supimos
country's president.
hora de la masacre de Acteal.
But we realized that at the moment of the massacre, the militaries were in the area.
Ahí están circulando. Después, a la mera hora de la masacre de Acteal, cuando
At the moment of the massacre, when shooting started
priistas, digamos, porque antes
from the priistas or the pre-party members, because we did not call them paramilitary before because we were not certain, we called them priistas belonging to the pre-party, the PRI. Then we knew that also the military participated and they cooperated with this massacre. So the different authorities that were supposed to protect us were the ones supporting them. So that's why we call them paramilitary, because they were trained by the military and by the official forces of the government. And when the Acteal massacre happened, then the military and the police disappeared for a couple of hours. And we had no idea where they were. We had no idea where the state presence was. Once the massacre was over, when those 45 brothers were massacred, then the military, the army came again and the police came back. So that's when we realized that it was planned by the three levels of the government.
Desde entonces, cuando fueron sepultados a nuestros hermanos nuestros, el 25 de diciembre
On December 25, 1997, when we went to bury our brothers, the military or the army
buscar campamentos militares.
started
Primero,
looking for encampments.
según lo que tenemos y lo que sabemos, los campamentos, pues decir como
So
8 campamentos ahí en el municipio de Chinampa.
there were 8 encampments established there.
Varias tareas, varias hectáreas de
They
territorio,
covered
sin pedir permiso
several areas of the territory without asking for permission.
comunidad. Nada más entraron, entonces empezaron a instalar sus campamentos.
They just went in there and they started to set up their encampments,
Abarcaron territorio de
and they took over
comunidades.
a big portion of the territory of the communities.
Entonces, ahí supimos de que es un plan que hizo el gobierno.
Then we realized it was a government's plan.
Nosotros, pues la actuación de los militares durante la masacre, pues
So the behavior of the military during the massacre, you know, they never help us.
hasta la actuación de los militares, pues violaron a mujeres,
They rape women,
que su objetivo era dar seguridad ante el pueblo.
even though their objective was supposed to
Fue lo contrario.
give security or provide security, but it was all the opposite.
Que somos. Entonces, pues vimos de que no hay ningún beneficio en el 1997.
So there was no benefit for us.
Eh,
There was no help for us when we were displaced, when we were massacred.
aunque otorgó despensas para los priistas, para los que están en las comunidades, pero nosotros estamos desplazados, entonces
So we were displaced and we were not helped.
no dio ningún beneficio.
We did not receive any benefit
Y es
from
por
them.
eso, la mayoría de las comunidades de las abejas
That's why most of communities from Las Abejas were,
participación y la actuación
they never agreed on the participation of the military during the 1997.
y posteriormente, como vimos de que no hay ningún beneficio, entonces tuvimos que
And since we saw no benefit, we had to and say that the military
pues están actuando mal
were
de nosotros.
not acting correctly.
Según el plan que tiene el gobierno o el presidente de la República, pues es registrar. Piensan que ya no quieren armas,
It is
ya no quieren
believed that the plan of the government is to
la presencia de armas en comunidades.
stop the or to avoid the presence of weapons in the
En las comunidades.
in the communities.
Nada más cuando nosotros nos vamos en nuestras parcelas, pues siempre nos revisan.
For instance, they always
Portamos
come into our homes and,
eh,
you know, check and see if we have weapons or guns,
cuchillos o machete.
you know, even machetes or knives. So they don't leave us alone. They're always in fear that we have weapons, which we never have.
Sobrevivimos a través de nuestro trabajo comunitario. y tra-
Our livelihood depends on what we do in our farms, but
Los militares,
we have a constant presence of the military
y a veces también
with harassment. They're always harassing us.
pues tienen que dar seguridad no nada más en sus campamentos, sino que también
And they should, or they should provide security
parcela donde tenemos
for everyone, not only in certain areas.
todo lo que-
And they go to our farms where we have all of our crops.
Entonces lo vemos de que
And what they do is to harass. So
los militares
their participation
beneficia como organización.
does not benefit
Y es
us.
por eso
And that's why
tuvimos que exigir a que se retiran.
we had to demand that they were removed from our territory.
Y tuvimos que hacer marchas, sobre todo
We had to
la marcha
protest
del
against them.
de marzo, para decir claramente cuáles son las
to raise our voice and say which were our objections against the military presence. And here in Chenalo, we managed to remove the military presence, but since there is daily conflict, they were back, or they came back. That's why we at the Abejas community, children, women, and the elders are afraid of weapons, are afraid of the military. They do not want to see weapons in their territory. They do not want to see the military there. But there's nothing we can do. It's a strategy to silence the voice of the people. It's a strategy from the official authorities to stop the organizations and keep them from raising their voice and keep them from participating in different events.
El discurso que voy a dar.
That's what I wanted to say. I was appointed to participate in this conference, to bring our experience, and to let you know what's going on with our community. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today with you. And thank you for listening to us. And remember that it's also important to spread the word. It is important to let people know what's happening here. Not only during these workshops, but also in different scenarios where you have the chance, either at the communities, the municipalities, either with the state and the country.
Entonces, por eso, esa es mi palabra que quiero dar.
So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and hope that you can spread the word and keep the story with you, that in Chiapas and that in Mexico, there's no justice. We as an organization, we are firm here, we raise our voice, and we are here to raise our voice, not only for our organization, but also the Mexican people and the Chiapas people. That's all, and I want to thank you once again for listening to us. Unfortunately, I only speak Spanish, but I hope you have understood most of what I wanted to convey. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a usted. Yo sé que hay preguntas para usted, pero
Thank
vamos
you
a...
very much. I know there are some questions, but we're going to leave those for the end of the session.
Juan.
Pues estamos al pendiente para escuchar sus preguntas.
Yeah, I'll be
Um,
on the lookout to answer the questions.
And if you're worried about forgetting them, feel free to type them in the chat box as they occur to you, and we'll keep them till the end and bring them up to all the panelists. But next, I'm thrilled to be bringing up Carlos Zorrilla. He's an environmental activist, farmer, biologist, conservationist, writer, photographer, and teacher. Cuban-born, he's lived for more than 40 years in Ecuador, where he's a leading activist opposing extractivism in the country and is a leader in the successful effort to defend the cloud forests of the Intag Valley in North Western Ecuador for the past 30 years. He's also the co-founder and executive director of DECOIN, the Defensa y Conservación Ecológica de Intag. I have had the enormous personal pleasure of getting to visit the beautiful cloud forest that Carlos has been instrumental in protecting. It is the most beautiful place on earth as far as I'm concerned, and just so inspirational for me personally in my life to see what a successful struggle to preserve paradise has looked like. And it's just such an honor to bring him up to the stage here. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you very much. That's quite the introduction. Let's see. It's a really just a pleasure to be here. And if I can add my little grain of sand and support to the struggle to stop the violence, I'm thrilled and honored. It's a rather long story because it's been, like you said, 30 years, almost 30 years, it'll be 29 years in January. And our struggle has been against extractivism, like you say, specifically against copper mining. In the 70s, the Belgian government discovered interesting signs of copper deposits in these biodiverse region of the Andes. And we are within the tropical Andes biodiversity hotspot, which is the most biodiverse of the 36 hotspots of the world. Later on, the Ecuadorian government invited the Japanese government to come and see the potential for developing a copper mine. And unfortunately, no one knew what they were doing for the first 3 or 4 years. And they were able to explore a little bit until we found out what it was all about. We helped organize the communities. I mean, we, the organization DECOIN, Defensa y Conservación Ecológica de Intag. In 1995, we founded our organization specifically to confront this mining threat to our communities and our environment. The area is dotted with small agricultural communities, primary cloud forests, clean rivers and streams everywhere. It is real. It's one of these biological gems that is still in the world. As soon as we found out what the real impacts were of a small copper mine due to an environmental impact study that was not edited, which usually happens, the communities organized to stop the development of this mine. This was in 1995. We were able to kick out the Japanese. There was the communities organized and they tried to open a dialogue with the government. The government refused. So the communities all banded together and they burned down the installations of the Japanese company, which was a subsidiary of Mitsubishi, at that time the most powerful corporation in the world. None of the equipment was burned down, just the building. Everything was returned to the government and the companies, but that was enough for the Japanese. And so that began the first chapter of this very long struggle against extractivism and transnational mining interests, supported as always by the government, by all branches of government. In 1998, the Japanese left and we were relative peace for 7 years. In that time, I knew the companies would return. They always return because the copper is still there. The companies come and go, but the resources are still there. So we had a few years, and in that time, we were able to organize, to create more organizations, to educate the people about the real impacts of mining in areas like this. So we were more prepared when the Canadians showed up, a Canadian mining company, one of these junior mining companies that are created overnight sometimes. And usually in Toronto, as a matter of fact, Canada is the #1 place in the world for mining companies to be registered because there is very little oversight by the regulatory authorities. So any crook can go to Canada and create a mining company, knowing that there will be very little regulations they can comply with. So that's where most of the world's mining corporations are based. the publicly traded mining companies. Unfortunately, we had to confront one of those, called at that time Ascendant Copper Corporation. They later had to change their name to Copper Mesa because all the bad publicity we were able to generate. So Ascendant Copper showed up in these valleys and mountains in May of 2004. So we had 7 years between the Japanese, the Canadians came. By then, we were the first organization, environmental organization, to be created in Intag. By then, there were several more. And by then, we had also started a strong environmental education campaign, which was successful enough that we got the support of all the local governments against mining. So the Canadians had a hard time going into the communities, very hard time. And of course, they blamed us, and we were on their site crosshair, like you call it, las miras, as I think it is in Spanish. And I was specifically picked out by the mining company for being responsible for sustaining and helping the communities. And also, actually, I was picked out because I also was denouncing the company in Canada and to the investors what they were doing. So they were getting in trouble with the Toronto Stock Exchange. So I was not a very popular figure back then. And so before I tell you what the company did, I want to show a little clip, if Rachel, if you're ready to show, from the minute 1908 approximately to 21, it will show the first paramilitary invasion by the Canadians, because they did hire paramilitaries. And then right after that, it'll be another chapter where the government of Ecuador came in with about 400 police and military and occupied all the area. So if you could show that from minute 1908 more or less. Yeah, it's coming. That's the Canadian hired paramilitaries, and these are the police in 2014.
Todos tenemos la Constitución y las leyes a las cuales debemos cumplir. Les pido por favor, no compliquen las cosas, que nosotros vamos a pasar a hacer el trabajo.
On May the 8th, the occupation of the police started. More than 100 police were sent to the area. They took control of the area and they blocked the traffic.
No puede pasar, señor.
They created checkpoints along the road.
Es que es flete.
Por eso, usted para irse para allá sin turno no puede pasar.
You cannot go over there if you do not have
No tiene frecuencia. No puede pasar, caballero. Yo voy a hacerle un parte, usted no tiene
Y
frecuencia.
para usted decirnos que debemos tener un salvoconducto, por favor, le pido nuevamente que nos indique la ley en la que dice que debe haber un salvoconducto para movilizarnos dentro del cantón.
Estamos indicando que los buses no pueden pasar allá sin turno.
Lo único que le pedimos nosotros es que nos muestre el articulado, la ley, en donde dice que debe pedirnos un salvoconducto por movilizarnos dentro de nuestro territorio, de nuestro cantón. Porque la Constitución en el artículo 66 dice la libre tránsito en el territorio nacional.
Usted se ha grabado de memoria ese artículo.
Y por eso, y yo me imagino que usted como policía...
Yeah, I see you have memorized it, but...
Perfect, thank you. Let me explain a little bit for some of you that don't speak Spanish. The first part, the black and white, was the paramilitaries hired by the Canadian mining companies to try to go into their mining concession, because the communities had stopped them over and over again, physically blocking the road. There was never any guns used. We do not believe in violence. It just creates more violence. So they would put their bodies on the road and just not allow the mining companies. So they got desperate and they went to the coast of Ecuador and hired ex-military, gave them false illegal armament and uniforms. And in December of 2006, they tried to go in violently after being repelled a month before in another community. But this time they hired more paramilitaries. They tried to go in, the community stopped them again, and they had to go back, amazingly enough. Not only that, they also went into the forest later on, and the community arrested 57 of them. They were heavily armed with guns and pepper spray, but they were able to be arrested. They were taken to the communities and turned over to the police. Nobody was hurt. I mean, some of the campesinos, some of my neighbors were shot at, and someone was grazed by bullets, but none of the police were, none of the paramilitaries were hurt. So that was the episode with Ascendant Copper. But before that, 2 months before that invasion, the company presented a false lawsuit against me to try and get me arrested. So one morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, 19 heavily armed police invaded my home looking for me. I had an arrest and search warrant, all made up by the mining company by paying false witnesses. Luckily, a neighbor called me 1 or 2 minutes before the police raided my home. They also left a gun and drugs in my house that later led to more arrest warrants. So I was on the run for a couple of months until I was able to neutralize the arrest warrant. Thanks a lot to international support, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, so forth. Nothing ever happened. The government never investigated any of this illegality, obviously, because they're interested in mining. Nobody went to jail for all those false armament and so on and so forth. I was able to evade arrest, and eventually I was able to get a lawyer to neutralize the arrest warrants, because I had 3 arrest warrants at one time. So that's a very short summary of the chapter with the Canadians. They left. We sued them in Canada. We have used the courts over and over again, which is important for some of you fighting against extractivism or something similar. And we were able to get the Toronto Stock Exchange to kick out the mining company from the stock exchange. So basically, we broke them. They ran out of money, so they stopped violating our rights. So they left around 2009, 2010. And then the third chapter, which is Codelco, the world's largest copper producer. Like I said, the companies come, copper is still there, so the companies come and go. So Codelco came with the full support of the state. They formed an alliance with the state-owned mining, Ecuadorian state-owned mining company. Again, they could not go in peacefully to the communities. So the government did a terrible smear campaign against the activists, me included. Again, I was again, for some reason they liked me. I was singled out. And so the president of Ecuador at that time, Rafael Correa, publicly smeared me in a nationally televised address to the nation. I had to go into hiding again. But they sent in over 400 police, which is what you saw in that video, not the black and white, but the color shots. And they installed Codelco in this primary forest, that's just stunning forest, waterfalls everywhere, 75 species of animals in danger of extinction, several farming communities nearby. They were able to install Codelco illegally with police protection. The police occupied all of the Intag area, and I'm talking Northwest Ecuador, one of the real hotspots of diversity. They occupied not only Junín, but several communities. The roads, people were turned back. They didn't want people to go into Junín. A lot of people tried to support Junín, but the police stopped them all illegally, violating all kinds of human rights, and nothing happened. So this is what communities in small communities, in our case, there's no indigenous communities here, it's all campesinos. So we're less protected even. But this is what you confront. It's just not a mining company when you confront these companies. You also confront the state. You confront also the bilateral investment treaties that protect these transnationals in countries like Ecuador, where countries like Ecuador are forced to guarantee the investments of these crooked companies that come over here, violate all kinds of rights. And so they cede sovereignty over and over again. This is what the real confrontation happens at these other levels, not just community mining company. And so far we've been able to do it. And we won a recent court victory in March of this year that stopped the mining development until the company can prove they will not violate the rights of nature, which is enshrined in Ecuador's constitution, and that they could do a proper prior environmental consultation. So we were able to present a successful lawsuit against them and won. So right now it's a standby. There's no mining at all. Codelco did explore, but they have not been able to develop the mine. And I'm sorry, I went over my time, but it is 30 years. But I'll be glad to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Carlos. You did cover a lot of ground and time in a short time, and we appreciate it. And I'm seeing a bunch of comments in the chat already. Looking forward to the discussion. But first, I'm so excited to bring up Daoud Nassar, who's the Director of Operations for the Tent of Nations. He's a native of Bethlehem, Palestine, is married to Juan Nassar, and they have 3 young children in their family. Daoud's a Palestinian Christian, fluent in Arabic, German, and English, with a degree in biblical studies from a Bible school in Austria, a BA degree in business from Bethlehem University, and a degree in tourism management from Germany. He manages the farm known as Daher's Vineyard, located in the West Bank of Palestine, and directs the work of the programs and projects known as Tent of Nations. We can't wait to hear all about it, Daoud. Welcome.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today. It's a privilege for me, it's an honor for me to be with you. I want to present something about a different place in this world, an area that is also affected by occupation and by a difficult political reality that we are facing. I need just like to open the presentation. I have some pictures to show you about what we are doing at the Tent of Nations. Let me share that with you, please. Okay. So it is important to say that many areas of the world are struggling for peace and justice, including Palestine. And our situation there is not that easy, and especially with what is happening on the ground, on the Palestinian ground. I'm talking about Palestine and specifically the area of the West Bank, which is under Israeli military control. And many of you, maybe they know that after 1967, the Israeli authorities started to take land from Palestine and started to build Israeli settlements that are growing to become big colonies. And the easiest way to take land or to confiscate the land from the Palestinians is to declare it as state land, leaving the burden on the landowners to prove ownership. Now, many Palestinians, and because of this, of the Ottoman period, did not register their land, so they cannot prove their title to their land, and so many pieces of land were confiscated. Of course, this is illegal and unjust because the occupied territories from 1967 is not a state property of Israel, but an occupied territory, and this is what the international law says. Now I want to talk about a personal story, which is actually the Palestinian story of land confiscation and building settlements. We own a piece of land that is located southwest of Bethlehem, where it is located on a hilltop. And today, the land that we call it Dahar's Vineyard, which is a family farm, is located in the center of 5 Israeli settlements, or growing to become colonies, which makes it there in our area the last hilltop that is without an Israeli settlement. Now, our story with this farm goes back to more than 100 years ago, when my family bought this piece of land during the Ottoman period. And as I said before, many people at that time did not register their land in order to not to pay property taxes. So my family at that time did 2 unusual things. The first thing they did, they registered the land. We have documentations from 1924 and later on, from the British, from the Jordanians, and even documentations after the Israeli occupation in 1967. Now, the other unusual thing the family did, they lived on the farm in a cave. So my grandfamily wanted their children to grow up on the farm, to be connected with the land, and to protect it. So they wanted to give them a better future, hoping that the situation will get better after 1920s. So my father and uncle came to the farm, which is 100 acres, continued the work of their parents, farming the land, living in caves until they passed away. And we grew up as the 3rd and the 4th generation, the same way, connected with the land. Now, things were changed for us in 1991. As you see here, this is the family farm, which is located on a hilltop. We heard that the Israeli authorities wanted to confiscate the farm and build a new settlement. We said this is unjust. We are the owners of the land, and we have all documents that prove our ownership to it. So we decided to challenge that, and we went to the military court because the West Bank is under Israeli military control. And we started a legal battle in 1991, and this legal battle is going on and on until today. We spent 12 years in front of the military court, and then we brought this case to the Israeli highest court of justice. And in 2007, and in order not to rule for our favor, the Supreme Court returned it back to the military authorities. And we are today in the process of re-register the land again. in order to be recognized as a private owned property. So we've been in a legal battle since more than 32 years, struggling to keep this family farm from the danger of confiscation. But the most important thing, of course, with a lot of expenses and energy and difficulties, but we did not give up. We are still struggling there without giving up, of course. Parallel to the legal battle, we had many physical attacks from Israeli settlers who came to the farm, cutting our trees, threatening building roads in order to establish a settlement. And we always responded legally, although the system is unjust for us. And we managed to stop them by court. And one time after we stopped them from digging a road, they got very angry. They destroyed trees, olive trees, but we managed to plant new trees sponsored by American and British Jewish people. It was a sign of hope that we are not alone in our struggle for justice. We are struggling to keep this farm with this also big financial pressure, but now we are becoming, the farm is becoming more isolated. The main access, as you see here on this picture, of the farm is blocked for us since 2001. The settlements that are around the farm are expanding. They build close to the farm a religious school. You know that religions in our area are being abused, and this might also create more violence. And the other big problem that we might face very soon is the building of a wall. We know that with walls, no one can achieve peace. With walls, people will create more hatred, more bitterness, and they create more enemies. But also the other problem with this wall is that the wall is not being built at the border between the Palestinian territories and Israel in order to claim it for security. No, the wall is going deep in our area, in the Palestinian areas, and in many places it is separating Palestinians from Palestinians and Palestinians from their own land. So the Tent of Nations is located in this area. Won't be able to cross the 6-7 miles to our community in Bethlehem. And of course, this situation will force many farmers who have land in this area to leave. As you see here, what is the blue colors are Israeli settlements in our area, so it will be like in an enclave, disconnected from Israeli territory, but also disconnected from our own community in Bethlehem. Now, adding to all of that, on our own land, because it's under Israeli military control, we have no access to running water, electricity, and a building permit. And this is a restriction on us in order not to be able to develop the farm easily. Of course, what I am saying here is not only the story of my family, but it is the story of many, many other Palestinians who are in the same or worse situation. Now, when people are pushed to the corner, when they have no hope for the future, when they are provoked by violence, no perspectives, they usually react with 3 options. The first normal response would be also reacting in a negative way, probably in a violent way, or resign or leave. Reacting non-violently, we said to ourselves, reacting in a negative way, we said, violence will create more violence, and people will never achieve anything positive out of violence. That's why we said this is not our way. we came to the second normal reaction, which is to sit down and maybe cry and wait for a hero to come and help. We said sitting down, blaming, and crying won't change our reality. On the contrary, we would become victims. And it is dangerous to fall in the victim mentality, although we have the right to be victims in this situation. Then we came to the last option, which is to run away, to leave the area. We said, well, running away won't change our reality. We need to face our challenges, but in a different way. And when we said in a different way, we mean in a non-violent way. And when we talk about non-violent way of resistance, it's a long way to go, and we might not see the outcome of our work immediately or not at all. And that's why, and before we started the fourth way, which is a non-violent way of resistance, and in order to keep ourselves on the right track and not to give up, we said four things that became our principle. The first thing we said, we refuse to be victims. As I said before, we have the right to be victims in this situation, where we find our land is being taken, our resources, the challenges that we have on the ground, the restrictions. But refusing to be a victim is an important thing for us in order to stand up and act instead of reacting, and to start acting in a different way. The second thing we said, we refuse to hate. Of course, it's easy said and very difficult to practice in a situation like that. Because in our situation, it's easy to get frustrated, and it's easy to be angry, and it is easy to give up. But we believe that with hatred, people would destroy themselves from within. And we believe that all people are created in the image of God, and God did not create something bad. In every human being, there is something good and something bad. So we want to respect the good, but not to expect the bad, not to accept the bad. So we have to stand up for our rights and tell the other what you are doing is unjust. Thirdly, we said we are acting differently, not because it's a weakness or a strategy. No, it is based on our faith. Because acting through our faith is important in order not to give up. And fourthly, we said we are people who believe in justice. And although the way for justice is too long, too difficult, too complicated, but we believe that one day the Son of Justice will rise again. So with those four principles, we got very motivated, and we stood up and we started a new way of nonviolent resistance, because we said from the beginning, we cannot overcome the evil with more evil. We cannot overcome hatred with more hatred. We cannot overcome darkness with more darkness. We have to do it the other way: evil with good, hatred with love, and darkness with light. And our fourth way is called we refuse to be enemies, which is an active, not a passive, an active way of nonviolent resistance. We started to call the farm the Tent of Nations. And with the Tent of Nations, we want to invest the negative energy that we might have in a constructive way, but also to open the farm, open the land for people to come and see. The best way of education, we always say, come and see, and then go back home and tell. And we are asking people to tell not only what they've heard, but what they've seen. So with this way of nonviolent resistance, we became more creative. We started becoming also like more environmentally aware. Creativity, nonviolent way of resistance is connected with creativity. For electricity, we found a way of generating electricity, which is a solar system. For running water, We depend on rainwater collected in cisterns. And then we started renovating existing caves since we are not allowed to build on the ground. And we started inviting people to the farm, to the 10 nations, to send them back home with a message of hope, even in a hopeless situation. We do a tree planting campaign. We do children's summer camp activities, working with traumatized children from refugee camps. And the idea with creativity is to help the children discover their talents, focus on the positives, and believe in themselves that they are able to make a difference. We have also harvest camps, inviting international volunteers to be part of our community through working the land, but learning from one another and empowering one another to go back home and become change makers in their own communities. Of course, beside many political challenges that we are facing, or our country is facing, we are facing also environmental challenges, and especially also we face also the climate change in our area. And that's why our long-term vision is one day to establish an educational environmental center focusing on sustainability, organic farming, renewable energy, community building, and non-violent way of resistance in action. Of course, it's a long way to go, but very important is to have a vision, be realistic, and walk in small steps. Even if we fall down, we stand up again and continue the journey. We have of course, a website, and also we have friends of 10th of Nations North America who are working with us and backing us with all the difficulties that we are facing. But I always say the long journey will continue, but always with faith, with love and hope. And this is the foundation of the work that we are doing.
Thank you so much, Daoud, for such an inspiring presentation. I'm seeing everyone in the chat saying that was inspiring. What a powerful sentiment to end on. I'm just going to close your screen share. Oh, you've done it. Perfect. Thank you. So now I'm going to invite everyone back on. Please turn on your video. And we'll let everybody see everybody. We have gotten a lot of questions. I'm going to try to categorize them and bring up a few of them. First, maybe a question of my own, which I think connects to some of the question the audience has raised. So part of why we were so eager to hear from the three of you and invited you all to speak is because there are so many examples around the world of incredible nonviolent resistance, but all three of you share examples of resistance that has lasted for decades, that has persisted despite continued threats, continued violence, continued land theft, etc. Everything Daoud just shared, Carlos laid out as well in terms of various companies and military efforts coming in over years. Juan shared about massacres and ongoing state violence. So I would love to hear from each of you thoughts on how your efforts have persisted over time, and maybe some of the learnings and challenges with that. Me and many other anti-war activists I work with can sometimes be very impatient. We want to win right away. We want a lot to happen immediately. So there's a lot to learn from struggles that have lasted for decades. Entonces, ¿qué podemos aprender de ustedes que han seguido con sus luchas durante muchos años, quizás 10, 20, 30 años? Sí, que nos pueden enseñar y qué han aprendido ustedes durante tanto tiempo siguiendo en esta lucha tan difícil. So maybe we will start with Juan. Vamos a empezar con Juan y su respuesta, and then we'll move to Carlos and Daoud. And the next question, we'll switch up the order.
I will start, right? Yeah.
No, and well, let's start with Juan Gómez.
Okay, sorry.
Bueno, está bien, pues qué bueno que tienen pregunta para
Thank you very
hacernos.
much for your question.
Pues estuve hablando sobre la masacre de Acteal.
I was talking about the massacre of Acteal.
Pues yo soy sobreviviente, como les dije.
As I said before, I'm a survivor and I am a witness, a first-hand witness of what happened.
Fui desplazado
I was displaced, I had to flee,
de mi familia, que es
and I lost a member of my family, which is my sister.
María Gómez Ruiz.
Her name is Maria Gómez Ruiz.
Estaba embarazada de 7
She was pregnant.
pues la actuación de los paramilitares. Pues,
Because of the paramilitary acting,
en el vientre de mí,
they removed the baby from the womb
en cuchillos. Las
with
personas
knives.
embarazadas, pues,
They did it to 4 women.
los paramilitares.
That's what the paramilitary did.
Pues desde la masacre de Acteal, pues,
So ever since that massacre,
como la mayor parte de los integrantes de la organización, nunca
most of the members of the organization have never had participation and never had the possibility to participate in different events or conferences such as this.
es difícil para nosotros
So it's been difficult for us because of the lack of experience, because of the lack of knowledge,
dar opiniones,
in giving our opinions,
pero gracias a Dios,
to also share proposals.
como organización que estamos luchando en la vía.
We are an organization which is fighting with nonviolence,
Nuestra fuerza como
which is our strength as an organization. Our strength is
fundación, pues, se fundó a través de la palabra de Dios.
through the word of God.
Desde entonces,
That's where our strength comes
pues,
from. Ever since 1997, the strength is
ayuno y oración.
or comes from fasting and praying.
En diferentes comunidades de
Everything that happens in different communities.
país. Cuando escuchamos en los
When we hear the communications of people disappearing, of people going to jail unjustly, land being taken away, we always pray, we always fast so that things don't turn out worse. That's our principle. And when there's a violation of human rights, we do
las organizaciones no están buscando problemas. No están buscando problemas. Su actuación de las organizaciones, pues, es defender el
we
derecho.
do a pilgrimage so that people see us and they understand that people have rights, different rights that they have. That's our demand, and we make ourselves visible through these activities. And we make people aware that the government don't care about us.
Sino que también somos excluidos.
We are excluded. So this way we are letting them know that we also belong to the state and we have rights, that we are citizens and we are human beings. That's why every 22nd of the month, we do our commemoration of our brothers who were massacred. To always remember them, to not forget what happened, and to denounce also the facts or the things that happen every month. because here in Chiapas, there's always something going on. There's always something happening in terms of violation of human rights, you know, persecution, harassment, unjust incarceration.
También existe mucho lo que es, pues sobre todo, a veces roban a seres humanos.
And sometimes even kidnapping people, or let's call it stealing people, you know. Criminals, criminal activities are very, very strong here. So the Abejas of Acteal, don't forget that in the Abejas of Acteal, you know that the abejas, or they have tried to divide us, but we are survivors and we keep fighting in different communities, and we do our fasting, our praying, so that people feel connected and organized in their fight. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you for highlighting, the dedication to the historical memory and to keep coming back as survivors to a shared goal, and also to remembering everyone who's been lost. I think that's really important and sometimes is skipped. Carlos, we'd love to hear from you thoughts about movements lasting decades and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to put into words, because I think for me, a lot of it's a very strong spiritual connection to the land, to the community. And what community is not just a social community, but a biological community. So I feel completely a part of this biological community. It seems the only thing I can do is to defend it, no matter what it takes. And it takes a lot. I think we can't kid ourselves. It is very draining on somebody's emotional well-being, psychological well-being, to be an activist for so long. But I can't imagine anything else. Once you become part of a community, social or biological community, you of course have to defend it. It's not easy, has not been easy. It's been very, very, very difficult. But you do it because you have to do it. And also there's a strong connection with the people here. There's some incredibly beautiful people. And why should they be forced to leave their homes? Because we are talking of relocation of at least 4 whole communities. Why they should be kicked out of the communities, their land, their culture. So there's this also sense of gross injustice that I can't stomach. And I think all of us here in this panel, and many of you, are in this as an activist because you cannot stomach the injustice. And in the back of your mind and heart, you believe that there is justice in the world. And so you try. That's what you do when you become part of a community, a real complete part of a community. It's very hard to explain, but I hope you understand.
No, those are powerful words. And I think everyone does understand that in their own, like in connection to what they can't stomach and what hope they have. So thank you. Daoud, please.
Well, you know, like, of course, like acting non-violently is a long way to go. And you know, many times we are more downs than ups. And that's why, you know, non-violent way of resistance should not be taken as a weakness or as a strategy. No, it's supposed to be like a way of life. Because if we won't be able to live it, we won't be able to believe in it. Because at the end, we won't be able to see the fruits immediately. So it would be great to see the fruits the next day. the positive change, but it is not the reality. And that's why it is very important is to follow our beliefs, to have it as a commitment, as a long way to go. And I always sometimes I say, like, even if we might not see the outcome of our work, maybe the new generation would would harvest the fruits. But anyway, it is important to look forward and follow a vision, but also to live in the reality and to do whatever is possible today without having a high expectation of change the next day. I want to do whatever I can today, and I leave something for tomorrow. So the moment we live in that moment and try to put our beliefs in action, I think we won't give up, because we know that my step today is important for a better tomorrow.
Thank you so much, all of you. I wish we had more time for this discussion. Unfortunately, we have another event coming up in 10 minutes, a much awaited debate, a friendly debate on the war in Ukraine and what's happening there, featuring James Brooke, Ray McGovern, David Swanson, and I know people will be really eager to get to that. But I will say that for the next 10 minutes, we do have expo booths open, including one called Session Reflections, which I would invite the speakers to go to now, and any people who would like to continue a more casual conversation with them to go to now for the next few minutes. The way you would do that is by clicking leave at the bottom of this Zoom window. And then when you're back in the lobby, click Expo at the top, in the top right corner. And then you'll see the first booth list there is called Session Reflection. That's just a casual space to chat. Of course, there are many ways to support the work of all three of these struggles. We'll be sending links out about their website and how you can continue to show up in solidarity with them, which I see so many people here in the chat are talking about wanting to do. But once again, I want to give a huge thank you to Daoud, to Carlos, to Juan for really sharing so personally and heartfully today. This is tough work and it's so important, and we just really appreciate what you shared with us today. So thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Lo apreciamos mucho lo que ustedes han compartido con todos nosotros aquí hoy día. Y sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you all. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.